Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Working Mums' first ever Return to Work Week. Working Mums has been going for many years, since the mid-2000s. Throughout that time, we've had lots of advice and information about return to work and all sorts of other issues, flexible working and everything. But this is our first ever Return to Work Week. There's absolutely loads of information all through the week. And so please do check out our website. Today, we're starting with, at the very beginning, with CVs, the kind of key issue when you're returning to work. And we're delighted to have with us Emma Wood from Purple CV, who's going to talk us through all the different things that you need to know. Obviously, it's a very kind of volatile kind of labour marketplace at the moment. There's all sorts of things going on. There's labour shortages, and then there's technology, and then there's some redundancies and things happening. So it's really good to have an expert here to tell you how you can boost your chances of success. Over to you, Emma.
Thank you. So my name's Emma. I am the senior CV writer for Purple CV. So today I'm going to be talking to you about how to write an effective CV. So we'll be talking about tailored precision, compelling storytelling, quantifiable achievements, the power of keywords, modern design, and also covering cover letters. So tailored precision. A generic CV won't cut it in today's competitive job market. Recruiters want to see that you've read the job description and that you're responding directly to it. They'll be able to tell if you've just simply sent a CV and cover letter and just all you've done is change the company name and the job that you're applying to. They will then obviously favour someone else's application over yours if your application doesn't show why you're such a good fit behind it. So how do you write a CV that is tailored for the role and company? Well, research, obviously. So before you begin, gather as much information as you can about the role and the company. Research the wider sector to work out what their values are and what challenges they are facing in the future. A really good website to go on is Glassdoor. Not only do they have jobs advertised, but it also gives you lots of information about that particular company, its work culture, the amount of people who work for them, and it's got reviews from present and past employees as well, who will give you some idea of what that company is like to work for, so you can kind of make up your mind if you'd want to work for that company anyway. So fact-finding about the company and the role, as I mentioned before, the Glassdoor is a really good one to look at. And your CV also needs to show how you've fulfilled or exceeded that job, the requirements of the job. So you need to demonstrate this by using key skills. And the way to do that, obviously, is researching through the job description, picking out the specific key skills that they're looking for. And the more specific you can be, the better. So back up your claims with real life examples. So if, for example, you're talking about you've got good communication skills, explain that in the job, your employment history. So you put something like demonstrable communication skills by, and then talking about how you've demonstrated your key skills, or utilize problem solving skills by, and then talk about how you've done that as well. For the most impact, only include relevant work experience for the job that you're going for. Obviously, you need to list all your job history if you can, but if you've done a job a few years ago and you're applying for that similar job now, kind of make that more prominent in your CV. So because there are lots of different types of CVs that you can do, which we'll go over a bit more later on. So, and sprinkle keywords in from the job description. And then so that when they're looking at your CV, they can see all that's in there. I've got a copy of a job description here for you. So this is kind of like a typical job description. So as well as the ideal person, what they're looking for, if you read through the job description, there's lots of different things you can pick up as well. So a commitment to continual improvement. So that could be something that you could sprinkle in your CV. Flexible, having a can-do, will-do attitude. And even though that's not perhaps part of what they're looking for, they said they're looking for someone who can work well within a team. Also, they're saying about how if you can answer customer queries by web, the post and email. Also, they're mentioning about how it's a home-based position, so therefore you require a suitable quiet space. So this is something else that you would be able to mention, perhaps in the cover letter, maybe not in the CV, but that could be one of your key skills, is that you can work remotely, because especially, you know, with COVID and everything, that is quite a good key skill to have. So yes.
Emma, on the format and everything, should you have like a little paragraph at the top where you're kind of like selling yourself, like a summary paragraph, and then should you get the keywords and things into that as much as possible?
Yes, definitely. So the profile bit, that's the bit at the top of the CV. So that's where you would perhaps, like I said, put different key skills in there, but also it's where you'd be talking about giving a really brief overview of your employment history and what type of sector you want to work in. The more tailored you make that bit, the better. If you can do a more generic one, that won't have as much impact, perhaps, as if it was more tailored. So yes, definitely, that's a really good idea. Yeah.
And I just wanted to say to people, if you've got any questions, please do put them in the chat the whole way through, and we'll be asking, putting the questions to Emma at the end.
Yes, please. Any questions that you have, anything you think I might not have covered, if you just want to pop them in there, I can answer either throughout or at the end. So yeah, so compelling storytelling. As I've mentioned this just now, and I'm sure you've all heard this before, but you would have encountered the advice that you should tailor your CV to the job description. So as I mentioned before, read the job description really, really carefully. And also remember that a one size does not fit all when you're when you're writing your CV. Employers want to see how your skills and experience match the specific roles that they're advertising. Look at the language that they've used in the job description. So as the job description that I just put up earlier, they're talking about striving for continual improvement. Well, you could try and put something like that in your CV, and mentioning how you do have a can-do or will-do attitude. That's something else that you could obviously put in the CV. Pick out keywords and phrases, highlight specific keywords and skills when you're looking at the applications. I don't know if any of you have heard of applicant tracking software, but lots of companies now are using these systems. And so basically what it is, they will feed the job description into their systems, and then they put the keywords that they're looking for. So they are bespoke to each employer. You get lots of ones that claim to do it online, but I would be wary of those. I'd be more concerned about what the employer is looking for. So yeah, so that's important as well. So if the job description is looking for good communication skills or strong attention to detail, make sure you get those in your CV. And again, that could be in the profile section, as we just talked about as well. Lots of roles also require soft skills, not just job related skills, but soft skills. So these could be working the team, interpersonal skills, communication, things like that. So that's also important to get in your CV as well. And make your experience fit. If you're applying for something that perhaps you've not ever done before, but you think you've got the transferable skills to do that, make that prominent in your CV. You could have a little section at the top, perhaps, with transferable expertise, and talk about how your skills and experience would go from one role to another. And again, that's depending on the CV, because you could have the traditional chronological CV, which is where you're talking about all your employment history is in in chronological order. Or if you haven't worked for a while, then do a more skills-based functional CV. So you could have, so like, for example, if they're looking at, again, communication skills, well, then put how you've got those skills and what you've done in your previous job roles. And then at the bottom, you could then perhaps have your employment history there. So there are lots of, sorry. Mandy?
Sorry, Emma, would you put that you've had a career break at any, in the when you're listing your employment history, would you, because we get asked that all the time.
Yeah, I would, because employers do want to know what you've been doing. So put that you've had a career break, that you've been raising a family, and all the kind of stuff that you've done whilst you've been off. So, looking after a household, or all sorts of things like that. There's lots of stuff that people have done whilst they've been on a career break that they can use for their CV and to show different things. So yeah, definitely put that in.
Great.
I would, yes. So does anyone have any questions so far, or?
Yeah, I wonder, like, when you're talking about the using the keywords and everything, if everybody does that, does that make them all the CVs look the same? Is it the examples that make you stand out, or is it the cover letter?
Well, yes, it's definitely the examples that make you stand out, because like you said, if people are going for the same job and then they've all got all these different skills, they're all going to put them down and they do look very samey. That's why it's important in your employment history, perhaps, to differentiate you from someone else by saying how you've got these communication skills. But yes, in the cover letter as well, that's really important too. Definitely. So quantifiable achievements. So quantifying your CV basically means adding numbers to show specific results and what you've done in what you've achieved throughout your job roles. So the numbers could be something about how you've increased profits, or the time you spent doing something, and how many people perhaps you've supervised. Using hard numbers when you create your CV is really important, because it shows the employers how you work, and what type of results you can produce. If you don't quantify your CV, it can perhaps look a bit more generic. So I've given some examples. So a more generic statement could be: worked at the front desk, answering phones, replying to emails, and checking guests in and out of their rooms. And to make that more effective, you could put something like: manage the front desk, checking over 45 guests in and out of their rooms and confirming over 20 new reservations via phone and email per shift. Another one would be regular communication with customers to increase profits. And then to make that more effective, you could put: work closely with customers to gain insights into their needs, which resulted in an increase of profits of 30% against a target of 20%. Go through your work history and note any achievements or tasks that you've done. If you've managed a cash register, for example, you could put how many customers you've seen throughout that shift. It's just quantifying what you've done. So something that perhaps you think isn't an achievement, it is. And it's amazing the amount of people that think, well, I've not achieved anything in my job. And then when you talk to them and find out about their experience, then they're like, oh wow, yes, I didn't know I did that. And it's, yeah, definitely, it's looking at what you've done and how you can quantify that.
So that's, yes.
Sorry.
So yes, you have.
Again, I was just going to say, again, that sets you apart from other applicants as well.
I mean, I guess in some people, some different roles, you probably think it's more difficult to quantify what you've done because they're more kind of soft skill type of things. But I guess that there is some way of quantifying most things if you think about it creatively.
Yeah, exactly. So, like the one that I just showed you previously about talk about how many people they've checked in. And perhaps that people wouldn't think you could quantify that, but obviously you can. So
yeah. Okay.
So the power of keywords. Your CV needs to resonate with the job that you're applying for, and you do this by incorporating relevant keywords from the job description. You can also, as well as looking at the job description, you can also use online tools like LinkedIn. If you pop on if there's a specific job you're applying for, then if you want to go on LinkedIn, you can look at people who perhaps have that same job that you want to apply for and look at the key skills and phrases that they've used in their profile. Then you can kind of put that in your CV as well. So there's some relevant keywords. For example, if you're going for a customer services role, You could put something like customer complaint management, communication, interpersonal skills, and strong attention to detail. As I mentioned earlier, applicant tracking systems, these can be the bane of people's lives, because if certain words aren't in the CV, they won't be picked up by the employer, and then they won't be put in front of a human person to actually read the CV. So as I said before, so how they work is they will put specific keywords and phrases that they're looking for. The computer software will scan the CV and pick out these keywords. So if, for example, this is a really basic example, but if they're looking for someone who is flexible, if that word wasn't in the CV, it wouldn't get picked up by the applicant tracking system. But it's also important as well not to overstuff your CV with just random keywords as well, because when it does get to the actual recruiter, they'll be able to tell if you're just overstuffing and you don't actually have that experience. So be specific with your skills. So vague expressions like good communication skills or a team player, they're not really good enough now. You need to use specific examples of how you've met these, how you've got these particular key skills. Using action verbs as well is a really good way of making your CV more impactful. So you could put something like achieved, developed, initiated, or directed at the beginning of the sentences to kind of give your CV more impact. Also highlighting your certifications and your education. So sometimes employers are looking for specific job-related qualifications. And sometimes as well, they're just looking for people with GCSEs or with a degree. So if you've got, even if you've got just 5 GCSEs, if that's what the employer is looking for, make sure that's on your CV as well. It's amazing that people don't put their education on because perhaps it was done so many years ago, or it's not relevant anymore. When you are putting your education on there, you don't need to include dates because that can age a person. So we always recommend not to put any dates on the education section.
Even the actual qualification can date you.
They are, yes, they can, yes, like O levels, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but if you've got not great education, you know, qualifications and things, and it's quite a long time ago, should you still mention those?
You see, it depends really, because they say, so when you look at a job description, they say if you meet around 65-70% of the essential criteria to still apply for that job. And because I've had people in the past who, if they've gone for jobs that require a degree, if they don't have that, just the experience can sometimes speak louder than a qualification, definitely. Obviously, if you're going for things where, you know, like a solicitor or a doctor or something like that, where you do need those qualifications. But I don't think it's always necessary to put them on, especially if they were done a few years ago.
Yeah.
So I think it's playing it by ear really and seeing how much you meet that job description.
And what about things like dating your job experience? Somebody's asked in the chat, you know, if that will date you, won't it? If it's a long time ago.
Yes, it will. So the rule of thumb generally is we say to go back for the last 10 years in more detail. If of course you haven't worked for the last 10 years, then perhaps you could think about doing, like I mentioned before, a more skills-based CV rather than the traditional chronological one. Because then that's bringing your skills and experiences to the forefront rather than it going perhaps onto the second page. So yes, and you can also put something like additional employment history available upon request if you have got work experience from quite a few years ago. So but you don't need to put anything, you know, because I've had people before who've wanted to put jobs that they've done in 1978, for example. I perhaps wouldn't put those on the CV, but make it more of a skills-based one than the chronological one.
Right.
Definitely. So modern design. when you're creating your CV, make sure you use it's a clear layout and formatting. I know lots of people want to kind of do all fancy designs and colours and all sorts of stuff on there. That can be quite off-putting to an employer. All they want to do is just be able to read your experience. They want to see it that's coherent and kind of follows a logical path. So as I mentioned before, you've got your profile, the key skills, and then this is if you're doing the more traditional one, and then your employment history. Bullet points and bolding, that's absolutely fine to put on the CV. In fact, bullet points are kind of encouraged, apart from perhaps in the profile, because if you've got reams and reams of writing, you know, loads of paragraphs, it's difficult for the recruiter to pick out the certain important things. So definitely use bullet points. Bolding is good as well, because it kind of separates the different sections of the CV, or perhaps highlights your different jobs, and the same with underlining. If you are going to be using bolds or italics, underlines, make sure you're consistent throughout the whole CV. So if you're going to do it for one job, make sure you do it for all your other jobs as well. Avoid fancy fonts. It needs to be readable for the employer. So Arial, Calibri, something like that is absolutely fine. And don't make the font size too small either, because then that makes it really difficult for people to read. Headers, footers and images or complicated formatting should be avoided at all costs. As I mentioned before, with ATS systems, they can't read anything like that. So anything with colour, columns, pictures, images, it will get rejected automatically. They kind of go from left to right, left to right, left to right. So if you've got it in columns, they can't read it all coherently. And yeah, they can't read anything with colour on, and it will just get automatically rejected, no matter how good your CV or how well you meet the criteria. So it really just needs to be black and white. 1 to 2 pages is perfectly acceptable. There's an example of a CV. This is just a 1-page example. So you've got, this is the more traditional chronological CV as well. So you've got the contact details at the top, and then you've got your personal profile. So that's a bit telling the employer about your experience. The key skills. Now, this is a section that you would perhaps change for each job that you're going for. So as I said, look at the key skills and make sure they match what they're looking for, and that you have them as well, obviously. Then we've got the career summary. So as you can see, that the job title is bold for all of them, and then everything else isn't, and then the use of bullet points. And then additional employment history. So if you just want to, if you do have jobs that go further on back, or perhaps not relevant for the job that you want to go for, you can just kind of put the job title and where you've worked. And then you've got your education as well. So yes, so this is kind of like perhaps how you would lay out your CV.
Well, Emma, somebody's asking about whether you should include voluntary work, and if so, how would you do that? Would you do that at the bottom?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, include it at the bottom. Now, however, if that voluntary experience is, so if you haven't worked for a while, but you have been doing voluntary work, that would go perhaps more at the top of the CV, because then it shows what you've been doing. But if you've been doing it alongside your regular job, then put that down the bottom. However, if it is relevant to the job that you want to apply for, then you can fit it in the career summary. So if you did it, say if you're working now and then you did the voluntary work 2 years ago, you could put your current position, and then underneath that put the voluntary employment. But if it's not relevant to what you want to do, then you can have a little section at the bottom of your employment history with voluntary work experience, and put that down. Yes.
Should you put references? Should you put just references can be supplied on request?
No, don't put that on there at all. That it takes up valuable space, and employers know they can contact, for references. So yes, so don't. The only time you would do that is if the job description specifically says names of references on the CV.
Okay, great.
So any other questions so far, or?
Oh, somebody's asking, should you put a reference on your LinkedIn profile? But that's a different issue.
Yeah.
That's the other CV.
You can do it on the LinkedIn. There's little section on there that I think it's called recommendations or something, and you can put stuff on there like that, but I wouldn't put it on the CV, definitely not, no, but you could on your LinkedIn, yes. Yes, that would be fine.
You said on the pages, the number of pages, you think you said 1 to 2 pages total?
1 to 2 pages, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely no more than 2 pages. I wouldn't put that on there, no, because employees, they don't have a huge amount of time to read CVs, so anything longer than that wouldn't be. I once had a CV that was 38 pages long, so I had to try and reduce that down to 3 pages.
And if your education experience is from abroad, and how do you kind of list that? Is it like equivalent? Do you have to explain the qualifications or how that?
Yes, you put the equivalent. There's a company, I think it's called NARIC, and you send off your qualifications to them, and then they will tell you the equivalent of the UK standard. So you could put what your qualification is and then put equivalent of whatever it is in the UK. So yes. So cover letters. Oh, sorry, did you have?
No, there's lots of questions coming through, but we'll probably do those at the end, I think.
Yes, no, that's fine. So a cover letter, that's a document that you would send alongside your CV. So the cover letter, they are quite important because it kind of explains who you are, the skills and experience that you have, and what you know about the job that you're going for. And this is where you can show off the research that you've done, by saying something like, I want to work for this company because, and then what you found out about that particular company. So how do I write? Oh, sorry, what is a cover letter? So as I said before, a cover letter is what you send alongside your CV. In the cover letter, you would explain why you're applying for the job, and the skills and everything, and how you match that job. So how do I write a good cover letter? So before you start writing your letter, again, you need to do your research on the company. So try and find out more about the company as well. So try and find out who'll be reading the cover letter, what the organisation is and its culture, the industry it operates in, and any relevant news towards that sector. So again, this is where researching stuff on LinkedIn is a really good idea, and the website Glassdoor that I mentioned as well. That's where you can get some really good research and knowledge of everything. So when writing your cover letter, you need to keep it brief, whilst making sure it emphasises your suitability for that particular role. So it should be no longer than perhaps 4 or 5 paragraphs, and definitely not longer than 1 A4 side of paper. So in your first paragraph, you would mention about why you're applying for the job, and where you saw the job advertised. The second paragraph, you could perhaps highlight your relevant experience and demonstrate how your skills match what they're looking for. So this is where you would give examples. A really good way is perhaps using the STAR technique. So the situation, the task, the I forgot what the A is, and then the result of what you've done, of how you've achieved that. So the action that you took, and then the result. So that's a really good way of getting down, of giving examples of your experience. The third paragraph, you could explain what attracted you to the job and the company. So this is where you put in, I'm applying for this job because this company is such a blah, blah, blah. And then also mention what you can offer to the company as well. And then the fourth paragraph is kind of the closing bit to round up your letter. So reiterate your interest in the role and the company, and also your desire for an interview with them, and then how you can be contacted as well if you are invited to an interview. So This is a quick example of a cover letter. So obviously you've got your contact details, and the bits that I've highlighted in yellow. So the date, the recruiter's name, if you can find it, and then the position that you're applying for, and then the company name, and then it's given a brief overview of your career history and what you've done previously. And then I'm applying for this role because, and then you give your reasons why you're applying for that particular job.
This is completely off the point of CVs, but a lot of jobs are application forms. Should you send, I mean, they don't allow you to send a cover letter, which is a shame. Or should you send a cover letter, even with an application form, because it is your chance, isn't it, to actually sort of spell out why you want the job?
It is your chance, but they normally have on the application forms the bit at the back why you're applying for the job, and
yeah,
this is where I perhaps would put that, definitely. So yeah, that's where it's a difficult one with cover letters, because some people just don't send them, but I do think it, unless they specifically say not to send a cover letter, I would always send a cover letter.
Yes, great. So I'm looking, there's loads of questions that have come in on the chat. Just looking down them at the moment. So somebody's saying, I'm looking to get into a new career. I don't have formal experience in this sector, although I'm volunteering in a related area right now. Should I focus on a skills-based CV rather than employment history?
Yes, I definitely would. I was, focus on the skills. And so with the voluntary work that you're doing now, it's kind of linked, you said, to what you want to do. So definitely make that more prominent as well, and type of stuff that you've done. Yeah. Okay,
great. And somebody's asking if we can kind of provide a sort of template for different types, so a chronological versus a skills-based.
So would I just send that over to you and then it gets distributed afterwards?
Yeah, that would be really good. Yeah. When it comes to things like artificial intelligence and all that we're hearing about daily. How useful is it to use, say, ChatGPT to do your cover letters and your CV sort of stuff? Not good.
Not good at all. No, because
generic.
Yeah, it makes it really generic. It doesn't give any kind of specific details. I saw a cover letter the other day, funnily enough, that was done by ChatGPT, and there was no substance to it whatsoever.
Yeah.
It definitely, and also our recruiters are obviously cottoning onto this AI stuff, and they've got programs as well that they can check to see if AI has been used to create the documents. So I really wouldn't do that. I mean, it's okay to use that kind of stuff perhaps to get ideas of what to put in, but definitely write it yourself. Yeah.
No, I know that, yes, it's a kind of starting point, isn't it? People use it for writing articles as well, but it's a starting point. I think if you've got a kind of blank in your head.
Really good starting point, but yeah,
change it to your own words, as well as the keywords, obviously.
Yeah.
Yes, and your own examples, really crucial, the examples that you give. Yeah. No. Great. And should you provide your date of birth and things like that? Is that important? No.
No, definitely not. No, and don't put anything about your marital status or how many children you have or anything like that. Yes, no, you don't need to put that kind of stuff on. So
brilliant. Well, that's been so useful, Emma. Thanks so much for all. And I'm sure, and there's lots more questions in the chat. So maybe we can send them to you, and you can.
That would be absolutely fine. Yeah, send them through
on the website. Yeah,
that would be really good, and I can get some examples of the different CVs and send them over as well.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thanks so much. And it's really, really useful to have all of that. And we've also got some other events today on CVs, some videos that are going up on the ATS system and all of those kind of things, which I know kind of mind modeling. older ones like me who haven't had to deal with this in the past. And we've also got our podcast, which is out today and has a focus on CV writing too. So please do check that out. And there's loads of information generally on our website about applying for CVs. And also on the research side, we've got top employer platform. So that sort of highlights employers that are kind of more flexible and looking to and more kind of family focused or family friendly. So do check that out as well. And all our features on employers. Thank you so much for attending this first session. And please do also check out the Return to Work Week events, the rest of the ones all week. We've got several events every day. So we hope you enjoy them. Thank you.
Thank you.